Hey everyone, I'm Shanif, the founder of Locusive. Locusive is a company that helps you connect your business data to large language models and chatbots. Now, this is the first video that I'm doing in a series of videos around learning a little bit more of this technology and trying to understand how you can make it work for you. In today's video, we're going to be talking about vector databases. So what are they? Why do you need them? Now, we've already written an article about this, which you can find here on our Locusive website, and I'll paste the link into the video notes below. But sometimes it's helpful to just get a sense of what's actually happening under the hood. And so in today's video, I'm going to walk you through what are vector databases, why do we need them, and how do they work from the perspective of code so that you can get a sense for if this is a technology that you need to implement for yourselves. All right, so let's just talk quickly about the use case here. Maybe you've got a whole bunch of data that you want to ask questions of, or maybe you've got some sort of business information that you want to get a sense for what's going on. In this case, just for the purposes of showing you what I'm talking about, I've got a very large 10K document here. It's from the SEC. It's not even a 10K. It's just instructions on how to prepare a 10K. And maybe I want to ask questions of it. Well, normally what you might be able to do is copy all of this here into a bot like ChatGPT and then ask it to analyze this document for you. So you could say something like, please analyze the content below. And you copy and paste this in. But what you're going to end up finding is this document is too long for tools like ChatGPT, perhaps even something longer like Claude to be able to understand. And that's because these tools have what's called a context window, or a certain amount of limitation on the number of words that you can provide it. Different models have different context windows, but usually it's never going to be more than a few thousand words. So you still need to be able to search through this information and get your answers, but you're not able to copy and paste all this information into ChatGPT right away. So what do? Well, if you're working with the ChatGPT API or some of the other APIs that these large language models provide, you actually have a few options ready for you. If you've never used the API, it's really straightforward. I'll show you a quick example here. I'll just bring up a quick Java code, small ad hoc script that I wrote. And you can see here, all it's doing is it's creating an OpenAI client, which is some code that I've written. You can ignore the organization ID. It's just some code that I've got for my own purposes. You can see here I'm passing in a system message and a user message of who wrote Frankenstein. If I run this code here, it's going to ask this question to ChatGPT, and then it'll come back with an answer. Well, it says, well, Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. So if you're using ChatGPT's API, you can start to do things like providing in-context documentation and references that you can refer to when you're asking ChatGPT a question. So this means that you can start to bring in relevant pieces of information. Now, the problem is, again, you maybe have a lot of pieces of information. So how do you figure out what's the right piece of information to provide? Well, that's where a vector database comes in. Vector databases allow you to store documents and then retrieve portions of those documents that are relevant to your query. So if I had actually had a list of literature or authors and I had stored that before, I could have used the vector database to look up a list of all of the authors for old literature classics and then provided that to ChatGPT. Now, I didn't need to do that here because this is common knowledge, but for business data, this could actually be really useful. So that's what vector databases do. They allow you to provide the right piece of documentation or pieces of documentation so that you can find an answer for a particular question you've got. So let's see how that works really quickly. Well, when you've got a large piece of documentation, you first need to index that document. Now, what does it mean to index a document? Essentially what it means is you read all of the content of the document and then you break it up into chunks and then you send each chunk into a vector database with what's called an embedding. An embedding is just a vector, basically a series of numbers that represent that document. I'll walk you through what that looks like in my code base here on this tool called the Document Index Client. Now here there's this method here called upsert to Pinecone. Pinecone is one of the world's most famous vector databases, and you can actually start to index documents into Pinecone. So it's fairly straightforward. I won't walk you through the whole thing here, and if you're not a developer, I'll just sort of walk you through what's going on here. But essentially what's happening is we're first getting through a list of all of the text that we want to save in the vector database, and we're getting the embedding for that text. An embedding, like I said earlier, is a series of numbers that represent a document. Now, the interesting thing here is these numbers actually represent that document in a very intelligent way. It represents the semantics or the meaning of a particular piece of text. And then we'll actually go ahead and we'll create a vector by just assigning it some metadata and constructing the vector from the document and the embedding. And then we upsert this, or we submit it to be saved into a vector database, in our case, Pinecone. And if we do this for all of the text chunks of a large document, essentially what you'll have is you'll have a very large document saved inside your vector database in chunks. So I'll actually walk you through what a vector database might look like on your side. Like we said, we use Pinecone over here, but there's a lot of different vector databases that you might be able to use. So if I bring this over here, just put this right here, Pinecone provides you with the ability to store your vectors inside of their hosted data. So here we're using a dev database to keep track of all of our vectors. And if we just take a look here, this is what a vector could look like, just a series of, in our case, it's actually 1,500, more than 1,500 different decimal floats for a single vector. But then once you get it, you'll essentially get a list of matches along with the document's original text that goes with those matches. So this is the front-end interface to Pinecone. Now, anyway, the way you want to use this is to actually query your Pinecone vector database or any other vector databases you have with a particular text query. So, and I'll show you how that looks really quickly here. I've got a simple query script here. Again, it's in Java. I know that's not the cool kid on the block these days. Everyone uses Python, but we use Java for a variety of different purposes and reasons. But we've got a simple script here, and we've got this object called document index client, and we're passing in this simple query: when was soccer first played? This is relevant for us because we have a particular document that we've already indexed into our vector database around soccer. I'll show it to you right here really quickly. It's a simple document, kind of fun, but it's got a history of soccer and what it is and when it was first played. Now, if we go ahead and we run this small script here, which I'll do right now, you can see the script is basically just passing in this particular query: when was soccer first played? It's getting the top document matches from my vector database. So what happens? Well, what happens is you can come back, and I'll increase this here. I'll zoom in a little bit here. You can see it found 8 documents. Now, that's really just a document snippet. It gives you the URL for the original document here. This is something that I stored in the metadata of the vector. And then it comes back with this subset of information from the document. This subset is actually not the actual embedding or the vector. It was the metadata, the text metadata that I stored along with the vector itself. But you can see that it's very relevant to my query. I've got hundreds of documents and Google Sheets and other material that I've indexed into my account. But you can see the very first result that comes back is a highly relevant snippet about soccer. And then we'll have another highly relevant snippet. And then we'll have a few more as well. You can set the number of snippets that you want to get back. And I've also set a threshold for how strict do I want to be with my matches. You can set a threshold from 0 to 1 in many use cases. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is if you give a particular query to a vector database, you can come back with the right documents or the right context for that vector database, and then you can submit those contents to ChatGPT or to any search engine or whatever it is that you want to use. And by taking the subset of vector database results that come back, you're now able to fit your query plus the relevant context into a context window for ChatGPT, which allows you to get a result without having to run into the context window limits. Now, hopefully this was helpful. We're going to continue to provide these short video snippet tutorials. One of our next ones is going to be how do you build a custom chatbot for your business. One other thing I'd like to mention is if you don't want to deal with the hassle of running a vector database or doing your own embeddings, which actually requires an OpenAI API key along with costs, you can always use our API, which allows you to actually go through and put in your own documents without having to worry about embeddings. You simply send us the text values, we'll save it for you, and then you can query them later. All right, well, that's all for today. Thanks for taking the time and for watching this. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I am Shanif at Locusive.com. Check out Locusive for additional tools to help you build your own chat-enabled apps. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great day.